Growing up in Tacoma, Washington, what can you tell me about that experience? Just as a guy who's never even been to the Pacific Northwest, what can you tell me about the Pacific Northwest, what it's like to grow up there, and I guess eventually how you discovered football out there?
Yeah, it's interesting growing up in the Northwest. You get a lot of rain. Football wasn't a big deal growing up. I mean, when I was growing up in the late '80s, it wasn't a big deal in the country yet either. And so I grew up in a town, city, Tacoma, Washington, that is it's a mid-sized city. Seattle's the big city out there, but my world was really small. The guys, the people I grew up with, like you just operated in your 10-mile radius, and obviously no internet, stuff like that growing up. So like the world was just really, really tiny. And my world basically consisted of the Boys and Girls Club. And my parents dropped me off there at the Boys and Girls Club in first grade and signed me up for baseball. I loved baseball. I played it, and then I started, by third grade, I was playing all three sports, baseball, football, and basketball, and loved it. Like, that was my life, Boys and Girls Club. You just went there after school. You were there until, 9 o'clock at night when your parents would pick you up, and you went home, and you went to school the next day, and you went back to the Boys and Girls Club. And that was, like, my whole life was competing, from first grade on. And had some great coaches, really, really cool coaches that taught us the game of football, taught us the game of basketball, taught us the game of baseball, but more than anything, taught us really kind of how to be, great young men, and they taught character at a young age, and a lot of those guys that were on those teams that I played for are doing a lot of the same things. They're coaching or they're in leadership positions and doing great, and ironically enough, I started in the fifth grade. I played with Lawyer Malloy. And, both of us ended up with 16-year careers in the NFL. He had a quite different path than I did. He was a second-round draft pick and won a Super Bowl with the Patriots and stuff like that. And we're both from, the inner city of Tacoma and just kind of this small area that, like I said, like Seattle was 30 minutes away. It might as well have been on the East Coast. You just didn't do that. You were just where you were at all the time. And so really a tight-knit group of kids that we grew up with, and then going to Lincoln High School, which at the time was roughly 50% minority, 50% white. And when I say minority, it was every kind of nationality that you can think of. And so it was a really cool experience growing up. I always say, I got a good education, but the best education I got was life education. When you have to deal with that many different cultural and diverse situations that people come from. And, my parents were very supportive. They had me at 18. The reason they got married was because they found out they were pregnant with me. And but they were, athletes, and my mom especially was the one that kind of shaped me. She would always just tell me, no matter what you're doing, you do your best at it, period. That's it. There is nothing less than that. And I can always tell when she was mad at me. John Kelly, she called me by my middle name. So anytime she had my middle name, I knew I was in trouble, and I didn't do what I was supposed to do in whatever it was. But sports was always a part of my life.
Awesome. Is there a particular moment that you recall where you fell in love with football?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I hated football growing up, to be honest. So my best friends played. I was undersized from, all the way until ninth grade. I was undersized. I was 5'2" in the eighth grade. Graduated eighth grade at 5'2", less than 100 pounds. And so I actually had to play. When I was in fifth grade, I was playing for the fourth grade team. When I was in sixth grade, I was playing down. Most kids play up. I played down. My best friend at the time, though, in fifth grade, sixth grade, he's 6'3", with a goatee, dunking, running, 50 seconds in the 400. He was just this freakish athlete. And so, I didn't really like football, but I played it because I could be with my buddies. And if I wasn't going to play football, I was going to miss out. Like, what was I going to do? And I didn't want to hang around my house. My parents would put me to work. So, you had to play football, and it was just something you did. But I didn't like it. Matter of fact, I remember my first practice. I go to my first practice, and they're doing a modified Oklahoma drill, and I got to go up and I got to go hit this kid. And I hit him, and I remember going up to the coach afterwards. You know, I'm in 5th grade. Coach, what position do I have to play to not hit somebody? And he says, quarterback. And I'm like, that's what I want to play. He's like, great, because you're on our baseball team. We were hoping you could play quarterback. You know, we need somebody who could throw it. So, like, I immediately started playing quarterback right away. And but all through high school, didn't really like it. I was handing the ball off to Lawyer Malloy. We didn't really throw the ball. I mean, it was, you know, we might throw the ball 6 or 7 times a game. It wasn't very fun. It was just handing the ball off. I was a means of getting the ball from the center to Lawyer Malloy. That was my job. And then I got to college, and, you know, I loved baseball. And one of the reasons I went to the college I went to is they said I could play both baseball and football. And so I went there, and my freshman year, I ran into a coach. My coach there was Greg Olson. His name was Greg Olson, and I had him for 3 years there. And he was the one that taught me the love of the game and taught me how to play quarterback. And he grinded me like crazy, and just doing the fundamental stuff and learning how to compete and learning how to lead your teammates and learning how to study a defense and stuff like that. So then I fell in love with it and gave up baseball and said, I want to go on with this football thing, and loved it. I had him for 3 years, and ironically enough, Greg Olson is the offensive coordinator for the Raiders now. He's been in the NFL for probably 20 years now, coordinating and being a quarterback coach. And so I was just very fortunate to have him, because without him, I don't think I would have had the same love for football. And that kind of, you know, when I think of a coach who instilled that in me, that's what I'm trying to do with these young men that I have out here, which is, you know, more than likely you're not going to play in college. You know, even more or less likely you're not going to make it to the pros. So I want this experience to be something that they just love. And they just love football and love coming to practice and love learning. And that's what Greg Olson did for me. So it was my freshman year.
Awesome, and you led into my next question too. The University of Central Washington. I'm assuming you weren't a high recruit to.
It's a fair assumption. It's a fair assumption.
Was that your only option? Or did you have other options at the time?
No, I always say, if I picked this bar up and stood it up, that's what I looked like coming out of high school. I was 6'3", 160 pounds. And, you know, you couldn't have told me I wasn't buff, you know, all this stuff. I didn't know what a weight room was, didn't really know what working was, you know, and just didn't understand where I came from. It wasn't a priority. And so, yeah, I didn't get recruited. And I always say this, if it wasn't for my best friend, the 6'3" guy that could jump and run and all that stuff, Central Washington wanted him badly as a receiver. And I think they did their homework and found out I'm his best friend. We're thick as thieves. If we're going anywhere, we're going together. And so they allowed me to come along with them. I mean, there's no scholarship, so they just recruit people, so you just show up. Well, my first day on campus at Central Washington for fall camp, I'm the 12th string quarterback. Greg Olson's handing out footballs. He gives one to the starter, he gives one to the backup, he gives one to the third quarterback, and he's going down the line. And he gets to me, he ain't got any footballs left in that bag. He only had 11, and there was 12 of us. And I'm the only one that didn't get one. I had to go get one of the footballs I stole from my high school to bring it so I could practice, because you had to have your own ball for practice. So, yeah, Central was the only option I had, really, to be honest.
So that's amazing. That is truly amazing. So when do you go from 12th string quarterback to starter?
So 3 days in, I'm going to quit football. I'm done. Like, I'm getting 0 reps, and it isn't fun. I didn't really like football anyways. Like, I'm a baseball player in my mind. And I remember my 3rd day, I was sitting down for lunch at football camp, and I had some seniors that were they were from Tacoma too, so they kind of took us under their wing, me and my buddy. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, you know, I'm gonna give up the football thing. I'm telling them, I've already talked to my dad the night before, told my dad, you know, Pops, you know, this ain't it, man. It's no fun. I get no reps. You know, I don't even have my own football. It's like, what am I doing here? My dad's like, son, whatever you want, we're going to support you. You know, and you just make your decision, whatever. And I tell those guys, that dude's name is Eric Bowles. Eric Bowles, who was a senior receiver at the time, on his way to the NFL. And he says, do not quit. He says, you got what it takes. It's just going to take you a few days until you can start getting your reps. Do not quit. And I trusted him. It's crazy. This guy, Eric Bowles, in my life story, is at every pivotal moment. He's usually there. And so I trusted him. I stayed at it. And 2 weeks later, when we get done with fall camp, I was in essence the third string quarterback. I redshirted my first year and then came back, had a chance to compete. Greg Olson gave me a chance to compete with Bo Baldwin, who's won national championships at 1AA level as a coach and is a rising star in the coaching ranks. And at the end of camp, he said he brought both of us in. He said, "Okay, you guys have competed for 2.5 weeks now." He said, "John, I don't really feel like you beat Bo out, but I feel like we got a chance to win championships down the line if we go ahead and make the decision to play you as a freshman." And so I started every game but one in those 4 years, played, I think it was 48 games or something like that, and just had a great time doing it.
And so you become, you put up some really good numbers, I guess, your senior year at Central Washington, but I'm assuming you also still thought that maybe that might be it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it was something we prayed about. I believed in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, during the middle of my third year in college, and I still had that year and 2 more years to play. And after believing in Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, my whole life changed, and radically changed, and ended up getting married 10 months after that, believing in Jesus Christ. And my wife was a teacher and a coach, and so we both we prayed about it. We asked the Lord, give us an opportunity, create an opportunity for us. And there had been one person that had gone to the NFL from that place before me. And so we were just asking for one opportunity in the NFL. That's all we want. Just give us a chance. We just love a chance. And if not, we're going to go teach and coach. And the season ends and we win a national championship. And I'm barely even training. I'm doing my student teaching. And Dennis Erickson, who's the head coach with the Seahawks at the time, his nephew calls. He played for us. His nephew calls and says, "Hey, Coach E Uncle D wants to work us out." And so we drive over 2.5 hours in a Ford Escort to the Seahawks complex, and Coach Erickson puts us through a workout. And I don't think it was going very well, but then I started throwing, and to this day, it's one of the top 5 throwing days I've ever had in my life. And I just couldn't miss. I could do everything he asked me to do, so caught his eye. If you're going to catch anybody's eye, you want the head coach's eye or the general manager, and they were both there. And so the draft was about a month later, and they signed me as a free agent, and that's kind of started my journey.
Between being a 12th string quarterback
right.
and the unlikeliness of that situation occurring, how often do you kind of just reflect on that just unbelievable trajectory there? Because that's I don't know what the odds are of that, but it has to be astronomical. Yeah,
well, 1 Corinthians 2:9 says that no eye is seen, no ear is heard, no mind is conceived what God has planned for those who love him. And I've always tried to take God for his word. And his word says, man, pray about anything. Pray without ceasing. And follow me, abide in me. And so God does that stuff. God does amazing things. To create that opportunity to not only get into the league, but then to play and stay there for 16 years and build a great reputation and have great connections with people and incredible relationships that I built in the locker rooms with teammates and things like that. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's 1 Corinthians 2:9. It really is. And it's not me. It's just me being willing to let God take me and do whatever he wants with me. And that's been my coaching career too since I've been done. But it's been an incredible experience that my wife and I are huge dreamers. Like we believed we were going to get a chance in the league, but we thought it was going to be 1 year. 16 years later, we're retiring, going, what just happened? We saw the whole world, and I went from Tacoma to Seattle, played for the Seahawks, lived in Tacoma my first year. Didn't even move, stay in Tacoma, and then get to go to Cincinnati, Ohio, which got all kinds of history in it, go to Detroit, see that and be a part of that, different culture, and then coming to Dallas. It's just mind-blowing what God has allowed me to do.
What do you remember about those Seahawks teams in those years?
Yeah.
Because I believe you were backing up Warren Moon at the time. Take me through that just kind of period there.
The thing that I remember about that is that I would say the heavy amount of regret that window of time has for the guys that were involved with that. That was, of all my years playing, that was as talented a football team program that I was ever on in those years. Pro Bowler after Pro Bowler after Pro Bowler after Pro Bowler, and a great coaching staff, great ownership and administrative people above us. And it's just a reminder that in football, the littlest things are the difference between winning and losing. And one of the things I tell my players all the time is my job is to eliminate regret for you. That's my job. That's why I'm going to push you so hard. That's why when we do PAT, field goal, that is a Super Bowl for us, because we missed out on the playoffs and reaching our potential in Seattle because of little things, a block punt here or a missed assignment here, and the margin is so small in the NFL. And so, we just had an immense amount of talent that never reached its potential because we didn't get the little things done at the crucial moments. And that's unfortunate. But I remember, playing with Warren Moon and just his great mentorship and leadership to me. But John Freeze, they really shaped my career. They really did. And it was a great time, great time.
And the sort of unbelievable trajectory he continued even after Seattle. From Seattle, you go to the Barcelona Dragons of NFL Europe. What can you tell me about the Barcelona Dragons?
So this was between my first year and second year. So I go to the Seahawks, and I'm on practice squad, which basically you show up, practice, you never play. And so at the end of the year, Dennis brings me in, my quarterback coach brings me in, hey, we're probably going to send you over to NFL Europe. And so at the time, there's no internet. Like, the internet is new. Like, you don't know, there's, cell phones. Like, it's a smaller world, right? And I just got done playing, newly married. All I want to do is hang out with my wife. That's all I want to do. I just want to be with my wife, right? And so, again, we start praying, Lord, we don't want to go to the World League. We don't want to go. We don't know anything about it. I'm not trying to be there for 4 months without my wife. I don't want to do that. And so we're just praying, expecting the Lord to answer that prayer. So January comes and go, February comes and go, and literally right at the beginning of March, I get a phone call. And again, this is back in the day when they had to call your house. And it's this guy from London. He's got this English accent. And he's like, Jon Kitna, okay, you've been allocated to the Barcelona Dragons. Your flight, this is a Friday, your flight is Monday morning at 7 a.m. You get 2 bags. You're flying. There's no information, like nothing. Like, what in the world is happening here? And so, I'm crying, leaving at the airport on Monday, don't know when I'm going to see my wife again. And this is back when you didn't travel like the way we are now. And so literally get on this plane, go to Barcelona, we go to Carrollton, Georgia for training camp for a month. All the teams come there for a training camp. And it's at one light, one Walmart town. They got a Walmart and a Waffle House. That's it. And we're just practicing there for a month. And the greatest thing happened to me, though. Jack Bicknell was my head coach. And Dick Curl was my offensive coordinator. And Jack Bicknell couldn't be there's no more laid-back guy in all the world. He's coached Doug Flutie when Doug Flutie was famous at Boston College. Jack was his coach. He is so laid back. Such a good teacher, so good relationally. Dick Curl was great about teaching quarterback position. He made it really simple for me. And so I couldn't have been with better people. I was there in Carrollton, Georgia, get a box from my wife. You had to write letters back then, right? There's no email. There's no texting. There's none of that. Get a box from my wife. It's about this big. There's a letter. And I open it up. It's a pair of shoes. She's pregnant with our first child. But Jack was awesome. He let our families, our wives come over to Barcelona with us. So we fly over to Barcelona, and just a great time. I mean, you show up, you're right on the Mediterranean Sea. Our hotel couldn't have been 50 yards from there. I mean, just the people treated us tremendous. It rained 2 days the whole time we were there. and made some great relationships. And we went and won a World Bowl championship in 1997, and they voted me the MVP, which happens for quarterbacks when you win. But it was just some of those relationships I still have with guys from that team.
And it's just a surreal journey for you.
It really is.
So you do make your way back to the United States with as well with the Cincinnati Bengals at some point in this journey.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what those experiences were like, and what I'm assuming Carson Palmer comes in here at some point as well. So can you also take me through the Bengals tenure?
Yeah. So I got to start. My first game I ever got to start was in 1997 against the Oakland Raiders with the Seahawks. So practice squad, Barcelona, come back. I'm the third string quarterback with Warren Moon and John Freeze in '97. Right at the end of the season, we were kind of out of the playoffs, so they let me start first game against Oakland. I played one game. And then the next year I got to start 4 games at the end of the year. And then I got to be the starter for basically the next 2 years after that of my 5 years in Seattle. Go to Cincinnati, sign a contract to compete for the starting position, end up being a starter, started 12 games my first year there, and started 12 games my second year there. And then our second year, we weren't very good, so we ended up with a number 1 draft pick, and we drafted Carson Palmer in 2003. And again, what no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived, God has planned for those who love him. Here I am with the number 1 draft pick. This is in my opinion, the most talented quarterback I've ever seen in terms of throwing the football. It's Carson Palmer. I have no problem admitting that. And here I am, I'm kind of on a string. We don't start out very well. Marvin brings me in. Look, we watched the tape. You're not the issue. Keep playing. Keep doing what you're doing. I take every snap that year, every single snap. I'm the comeback player of the year for the NFL. We miss out on the playoffs by 7 points. Kind of revitalized Cincinnati a little bit. And Marvin brings me in his office a month after the season's over, say, hey, Carson's going to be the starter next year. Do you want us to look for a trade for you? And I said, no, I don't want you to look for a trade for me. You don't need to apologize for making Carson a starter. I have no problem with that. If God wanted me to be the starter, I would be. He doesn't. I'm going to be the best backup you can imagine. I'm going to do everything I can to help Carson. Love that guy like a brother. I'm going to help him. And so I stuck for 2 more years there as the backup to Carson. Got to see him do some incredible stuff. And then in 2005, became a free agent, and I left for Detroit.
And before we get to Detroit, you did play with one of the most polarizing.
Chad,
yeah.
That's my guy.
Do you have a favorite Ocho story that you could tell us?
I mean, there's 100 of them I could tell you, but he's one of the more authentic people I've ever been around, and I appreciate that. I loved him, loved everything about him. Still stay in touch with him. In fact, my daughter is on the equipment staff at Arizona State University, and his son is a freshman there, and so there's a connection there. But I loved him, loved everything about him, and just his story about where he came from and how he got to that place, and the way that he did things. And people, he's an attention getter. Man, he's brilliant, is what he is. We were in Cincinnati. You might as well. I mean, there's like 25 teams that mattered, and then there's 5 or 6 that nobody pays attention to. He was there, and he created a name for himself, and he brought attention to what we were doing there, and so I think all that mattered. But I guess if I had to say one story is that second year, 2002, is his second year, is my second year there. We go play Indianapolis in week 5, and he has probably 180 yards receiving, and we're going down. This is Peyton Manning's in the heyday of, he's getting going. And so we're down 28-21. We drive down. We're 2-minute drive, and I throw Chad a dig route, and it hits him literally right in his face. It goes right through his hands, hits his helmet, goes up in the air, interception, game's over. Now he's got 180 yards and 2 touchdowns or whatever it is. Incredible game. And I get done. I always stay out and pray after the game with the other team, and I get in the locker room, I'm usually the last one in there, and as I enter the locker room, I can just hear this wailing. It sounds like somebody's died. That kind of cry is happening. Well, it's Chad. And I go over there and talk to him, and he sits down. He's just like, kid, I just don't understand, why does that happen to me? Why do I do that? He's like, I just get so tired and I can't focus. And so we just had a conversation of, man, if you can be one of the best that's ever played this game, but you got to increase your conditioning level. And he took that and ran with it. From that point forward, he would take every rep in practice. He wouldn't let anybody come in. In fact, he would start taking scout team reps. Then he would go on scout team punt return, scout team kick return, just to get more conditioning. And so that was really the kickoff point for him, because he became in such great condition, he never got tired anymore. And then it was over for the rest of the DBs in that league. Like, they made up coverages for Chad Johnson because you could not cover him one-on-one. It was impossible to cover him one-on-one. Nobody could do it. So they had to make up coverages. And I really think that was a really cool story. It's something I share with my players a lot, is your body can handle a lot, but it's got to be in condition. You got to be able to run and not get tired. Because when you get tired, it's hard to focus.
2006 AFC wildcard game. You come into that game,
Yeah.
Carson suffers the devastating injury.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about your mind state in that game and just what
Hard.
that experience was like?
That was hard for everybody. I mean, people often describe moments where you feel like the air just left the place. That was that. I mean, we're back in the playoffs. Carson is rolling. We're rolling. We're one of the best offenses in the league. And our first series, he throws, again, one of the most beautiful passes you'll ever see to Chris Henry. And my eyes never leave the quarterback. I don't watch, when I'm the backup, I'm watching him, right? And I see him get hit, and he's down, and it doesn't look good. And immediately you're like, that didn't just happen. But at the same time, you got to go get ready to play. You don't have time to process that. You just got to go play. And fortunately, I had a lot of games that I had played going into that, and we played well in the first half and did some effective things. But they made some adjustments at halftime and really kind of took away some of the things that we were doing, and we ended up losing a tough fought game there. But it was as bad as it was to lose that game. I know, speaking for the rest of that team in that city, it was such an afterthought, because it was just about Carson and how bad we felt for him.
Your next chapter is the Detroit Lions, as you mentioned there, and you also have, another trying time. You guys go 0-16.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what lessons did you take away from that season?
Yeah. And
also your time in the Detroit era?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is I got to spend 2 years with Mike Martz, and one of the all-time offensive geniuses that you could ever be around, and somebody that I consider like a second father to me, and that I still stay in touch with now and have a great relationship with. They fired him after the second year, mainly because he was outspoken against things that weren't right, that we were doing organizationally that aren't right, and that weren't giving us a chance to be consistently successful. And he spoke up against those things, and so they fired him. They ran him out of town. And we didn't necessarily hire anybody to replace him. We just kind of moved forward. Well, you went from a genius to good coaches, but things weren't computing. And I was only healthy for 4 games. They put me on injury reserve after 4 games and basically banished me from the facility, so I wasn't around, because I was saying the same things that Mike was saying, like, this isn't right. But sometimes when you are that person and you reject passivity, as I try to train my young men, you reject passivity against things that aren't right, people are going to run you out of town. And 0-16 was a result of that.
Is there any, as you look back on it, is there any regret of that era?
No. See, people ask me all the time about Detroit. That had to be terrible. Let me tell you what wasn't terrible. In those 2 years and 4 games, I was roughly there 3 years, we saw 39 people give their life to Christ and get baptized in that locker room. Either players or their significant others give their life to Christ. And we saw marriages totally revamped. I still have great friendships with guys from there. And the football thing, man, 2007, we're rolling. We're 6-2. We're 6-2. And the bottom falls out, because, to be honest, our staff couldn't get along. People were against Mike and they couldn't get along. And that's what happens. We were rolling. Calvin is going great. Roy Williams is going great. Mike Furry's going great. Kevin Jones is running great. Our offensive line is playing great. Sean Rogers is, at the halfway point going to be the defensive player of the year. We're rolling. But our staff couldn't get along. And our season went in the tank.
And Calvin Johnson, that is a guy that I feel is he almost kind of missed. He was the end of his career was kind of towards the start of the social media era, and I'm just wondering, do you think people really understand how good that guy was? No,
because before him, you didn't see guys like that. Randy Moss was the tallest guy before him at 6'4", or slightly under 6'4". Here comes Calvin at 6'6", running a 4.3 40. I'll never forget the first time I threw him a ball. He's coming across the middle at probably 15 yards. And your eyes just aren't used to that as a quarterback, for a receiver to be moving that fast and being that tall. He looked like a tight end, but he was moving like a receiver. And that's a different thing. But, special football, special human being.
Doesn't get the credit that he deserves, probably?
Yeah, probably not. But, again, he had a shortened career, but, he did incredible things, and every week I know that the game plan was, how do we stop Calvin, and he had to deal with a lot of attention.
And you also find your way to Dallas.
Yeah, finally.
What do you remember about your Cowboys tenure? What sticks out?
Well, first of all, is Jason Garrett and just what he meant to me and what he taught me, and what a great man he is, and great leader he is. Love Wade Phillips, the great moments and conversations I got to have with Jerry Jones, just about running an organization and things like that. Those were tremendous times. But getting to meet Jesse Hawley, getting to meet Tashard Choice, those are relationships that I'm still tight with now. And but the first thing I get to remember is being there my first year and feeling like, is there another Christian here anywhere? Like, usually anywhere I go, at that time I was kind of like the NFL mascot for Christians, right? Like, people knew my reputation. I'm there for 3 months. Not one person comes up to me and talks to me about Christ. I'm like, where are the Christians at? But watching that locker room in 3 years, and the people that God brought, Kenyon Coleman and guys like that God brought, Duke Preston, to that place, and Tony Evans as our chaplain, Jonathan Evans as our chaplain, and how that locker room had some really, really healthy discussions on race, religion, society at large, and then watching guys give their life to Christ. That's the first thing. Secondly, I remember my first preseason game, going in the huddle, middle of the second quarter, whatever it is, standing in the huddle with Felix Jones and Martellus Bennett and Miles Austin, and thinking to myself, this is equally as talented as a huddle as I've ever been in. And I'm in the second huddle for the Dallas Cowboys. This is the backup huddle. And this is equally as talented as a huddle as I've ever been in. That was pretty significant. So that was pretty cool. But just, you play for Dallas, it's a different deal. And Jason was great about making sure we understood that. There's a responsibility to play for the Dallas Cowboys and to uphold the reputation of that program. And it was a tremendous amount of fun, and made some great relationships, great people in that building, from the trainers to the equipment people to the wait staff to people that worked in the marketing department that are still just really, really good people to us and my family.
You were involved in another kind of infamous, legendary game where you came in as an injury replacement, the 49ers game. What do you remember about that game? What do you remember about the Jesse Holley moment as well?
Yeah.
Obviously, you didn't make the throw, but you came in and you made that game able to come back for the boys.
Well, I think, going to that was such a weird one because there was always the feeling that Romo was going to go in and get a shot or, something, he's going to come back. And so you knew you weren't kind of in there for a long term. But I had played a lot the year before. So I remember before that game, Jesse just, he's kind of struggling a little bit. Just, he wasn't kind of forging the role he thought he was going to. And me and him at the Shard just sitting around and me just trying to encourage him, like, man, you never don't know when your time's coming. Just be ready. Just be ready. That's all you can control is when your time comes, being ready. And for him to have that moment, and I'll never forget just the tears of joy that came from him in the locker room. It's pretty cool. And it's cool to be a part of that moment. For sure. It's always good to beat the 49ers, of course.
And another one, I mentioned it to you, Des Bryant. You still have your picture with him as your email profile picture. I'm putting that out there. What was it like to be teammates with Des? Because you've now thrown to 3 of kind of like the most polarizing, talented guys between Calvin, Chad, and Des. What was it like to be teammates with Des?
I ran into him this offseason, had a chance to work with him, while I was working with Dak, and I love that man. Like, again, 100% authentic, and he is driven by football. Like, he just loves the game. Like, I think people that don't play the game, after high school or at a high level in college or whatever, don't really understand how many people play the game that don't really love the game. They just play it because I'm good at it and I don't know what else I would do. Like, Des loves football and so motivated by the football being thrown to him and doing everything he can to catch that thing. I mean, the stories are legendary of how long he would take to play catch with people at training camp. Like, if you started playing catch with him, you're in it for the next 45 minutes. You're going to throw 100 balls. And he's going to be 50 yards down. He's got a great arm. He just wants to play catch. He loves it. He loves the game. And I think that's something that, sometimes does that passion come out in a way that seems like it might be a distraction? Yeah, maybe. But not if you understand where it's coming from, which is this man loves this game. And he's frustrated. He wants the football because he feels like he can help you win. And I know this much. He's in great shape. And I hope somebody gives him a chance because I think he's going to help him.
Absolutely. What life lessons would you say you've learned from playing the game and then also from coaching the game?
Yeah, I think first of all is how to relate to people that don't look like you or don't come from the same background as you. That's the biggest life lesson I think that I've learned. That's why I love football. I think football teaches you a lot of other things. How to be resilient, right? How to work within the confines of structure and team, and to sacrifice from some personal things for the betterment of the whole, which I think is the basis of being a great father, right? I have to give up some things that maybe I would like to do so that my whole family can be better, that my wife can be better. And so you learn those things. You learn how to deal with, heartache. Losing football games sometimes, it's hard to look at kids when they've given you everything they got and then it didn't work out and they're just like distraught. But we always come back to that. Hey, did we do everything we could? Did we give all we got? Then we don't have anything to regret.
It is. What's been the hardest part about becoming a coach for you?
It's funny. That's a great question. The thing that's hardest is you went from the NFL, playing in the NFL for 16 years, And really, to be honest, in the NFL, what the NFL affords you to do is an opportunity to stay young-minded. Like, at the end of the day, what you need to do is handle your job. Be good at your job. What does your job require? Do that. Do that really, really well, whatever that job is, okay? And know that my teammates are going to do the same thing. Now, all of a sudden, you go from that and you retire, and 3 months later, you're coaching a high school football team that 85% of those kids have no dad at home, and all of a sudden, you went from having to worry just about your little area to now I got 100 kids that I need to make sure are going to class, getting the food that they need, learning our offensive playbook, making sure that they're doing the right things in the hallways. You become responsible for 100 people as opposed to you're just one little box. So I think that's the biggest. It's a paradigm shift is what it is, how your mind works, and you're responsible to, you're not responsible for those 100 young men.
And you've just been able to welcome that challenge.
Yeah, I've had great teachers and mentors that have prepared me for that and continue to walk with me in that understanding of what it really takes to be a leader of young men and men.
Being coaching at the NFL level, which you also have done with the Cowboys, what have you taken away from that helps you as a head coach as well?
Yeah, I just think, it was something I kind of knew because as a quarterback, one of the things that, people said when I took the job at Waxahachie, and I came from Washington State, I coached up there for 3 years, came down, took a job in Texas. And the Texas coaches weren't very happy, because you're not a Texas high school football coach. And I literally had coaches to my face say, you can't coach down here. You don't know how to coach Texas high school football. Well, one of the things about being a quarterback in the NFL is you are a coach. And so I learned a lot playing for 16 years about coaching, but then actually coaching for the Cowboys last year, what I figured out was how much of the, planning that goes into everything that you have to pull off at the pro level, not just playing on Sundays, but how do you do training camp, how practice works, when are they going to lift, when are they going to eat, when are you going to meet, like just the detail that goes into that, which again, I've always kind of felt like I knew that, and then last year it really kind of kept reiterating that for me.
When other high school coaches tell you that, and knowing everything that you've been through to get to where you are, what's your reaction?
Yeah, it was hard. That was hard because, people are fight or flight. I'm fight. I'm running towards that kind of stuff, but I get it. And I didn't understand it initially, but then going to Texas High School Coaches Association and going to coaches school and being around the coaches that have mentored me here in Texas, I understand because it's a lifestyle and it's something that takes years. You got to put your time and energy into this to get moved up, and so I understand where that came from.
Your proudest career moment, either coaching. Well, proudest career moment coaching, proudest career moment playing.
Yeah, my proudest moment in playing is just watching Carson Palmer play at a Pro Bowl level in 2005 and feeling like, because I was basically an assistant quarterback coach that year. And I think about how proud I am of being a part of his development and watching him just light the league on fire and take the Bengals back to the playoffs. And getting a chance to be a part of that from behind is awesome. It's what I figured out about myself, why I'm a coach. I love helping other people be their best versions of themselves. And so then coaching, there are probably too many, to be honest, because that is the deal for me. So when you're at Lincoln High School and you win back-to-back district championships and you go to the semifinals and the playoffs and they have won a district championship since 1960 something, that's a pretty proud moment. Or the fact that when I took that program over, they had a 1.4 GPA as a football program, and 3 years later we had a 3.2 GPA as a football program. That's a proud moment. and winning and beating some of the teams that we beat, great moments. Going to Waxahachie and taking a team that had won three games the previous 2 years and going 3 rounds deep in the playoffs and watching these young men go off to college and do well and go off to the military and do well and go off to trade school and do well. Those are proud moments, and bringing that pride back to that city. That is a very prideful city. And then, getting to coach with Dak last year and just watching him have his finest year, that's what I'm about.
That was actually going to be my final question to leave you on a Cowboys question. Is what have you've been in these rooms, you've seen Dak, you've seen him progress. What do you see from Dak here moving forward? Tell me about just kind of being in the room with him and seeing his development hands-on in those rooms and what you see for the Cowboys.
Well, it's the thing that I said from probably the first 2 weeks I was with him. There's very few people in life that wake up every day and say, how am I going to get better today? Rare. It's a rare trait. Most people want to get better when things are bad. Most people, I tell my players all the time, one of the greatest deterrents to future success is your current success. Because most people have success and relax. Like, he is constantly trying to get better at everything he does. He embraces every part of leadership. He embraces it all. How you talk to the media, how you respond to coaching, how you handle adversity, how you are in the weight room, how you are in the film room, how you are at walkthroughs. He's on time to everything. He's the first one there. He sits in the front. He talks to the team. He does what he is. Everything you want a person to be at that quarterback position, on top of being very talented at playing the position, and yet he still shows up every day and asks the question, how am I going to get better today? Who's going to help me get better today? And there would be times, Kit, what you got for me today? Come on now. You got to bring it. You got to bring it. And I just don't think many people wake up like that.
I think you're right, Jon. And this has been an incredible chat. Really appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's been great.
And look forward to potentially doing it again down the line.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, Jon.